We're making bacon even better by smoking pork belly on the pellet grill. Stick around to the end when I'll show you 2 different ways to enjoy this mouth-watering cut of meat. We will be starting off our cook today by patting down the juices that come on the pork belly in the packaging. We'll do this on both sides until our pork belly is dry. Pork belly typically comes in a huge slab. To help us have a consistent cook, we will cut the pork belly into 4 sections. Some parts are thinner than others, so having 4 sections allows us to have more control of the finished product and will help us get more bark, so it's a win-win. Now that we have our 4 sections, we will trim the pork belly of the silver skin and any excess fat that we don't want. Silver skin is the bluish, silverish lining between the meat and fat, and it won't render down in our cook. Since it won't render down, it will give the pork belly a tougher bite. Pork belly is extremely fatty, so we don't need any excess fat chunks on the meat side of our pork belly. We can leave the layer of fat on the underside though. Repeat this for all 4 sections of our pork belly. Today I'm using yellow mustard as my binder. A binder helps seasoning adhere to the meat. It typically doesn't add any flavor, and you could use things like hot sauce, mustard, or olive oil. We're gonna slather it over our whole entire pork belly. My first seasonings I'll be using today will be salt. Pork can handle a good amount of salt, and it helps to draw the moisture out of the meat, so I'm gonna go heavy. Next up, to add a lot of spice and to help build our bark, I'll be putting on some black pepper. Don't be afraid to coat it on heavy here. The fat in the pork belly makes this very rich, and it will help to balance out the spiciness of the black pepper. The spiciness of that black pepper and the fat of the pork belly really pair well together. To add in a little bit of red color to our bark, I'll be adding in some barbecue seasoning. I'm going very light because I don't want to season for flavor, just for looks. Now we're going to season all 4 sides of the meat, and we'll end up with the fat side up for our last coat of seasoning. I end this way because I'm going to smoke these fat side up, and I don't want to handle these much after I get the seasoning on. That way we can build a beautiful bark. So I decided to let this pork belly sweat out for about close to an hour. I wanted that salt to have a lot of time to really penetrate this meat, to draw out some of that moisture and to just soak in all that flavor. So today for this smoke, I'm doing it at 275 degrees. The reason why I'm going at 275 is because I'm actually a little bit crunched for time today. I work a night shift schedule. My wife has a day schedule. We have 2 kids. Life is very crazy. So I'm hoping that doing this at 275 degrees will speed up my cook a little bit while still allowing it to get some good smoke flavor. For you guys at home, if you have all the time in the world, you could smoke this at 200 all the way through, 225 all the way through, or even 250 degrees. If you want to, you could use a super smoke setting for 1 hour, then bump it up to 250 to 275. Really, pork belly is a very easy, very forgiving piece of meat to cook because it has such a high fat content that you can let it cook for a long time. If you overcook it a little bit, you probably won't even notice that much of a difference. The goal for today is to cook it to about 200 to 205 degrees, somewhere in that range. I want this piece of meat to be extremely tender, and I want it to have the nice little wiggle jiggles. So all we're gonna do is open up our Rectech. We're gonna go ahead and lay out our pork bellies on there across the way. For now, all we're gonna do is shut down our smoker. I know from personal experience that this is probably gonna take north of about 4 hours. So honestly, I'm just going to let this sit here in the smoke with the lid down for about 2 hours, and then I'll come back out then and we'll discuss what our next steps are. We are now at the 2-hour mark on our pork belly. At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and get a probe in the meat. The probe that I have connects to my smoker and goes in through this little hole right here. Then I'm just gonna pick a random piece of meat and I'm gonna put it into the center of the meat. And as you see, we're hitting up there around the high 160s. This is typically the part where meat starts to stall and you wrap it, but today I'm not gonna wrap it. I wanna form a really nice crust, a really nice bark on this pork belly. So I'll come back out periodically and take shots of the temperature that my probe is at. Super easy video today, guys. Hope you're following me along greatly. I'll see you guys soon. We're now at the 4-hour mark on our pork belly. And as you guys can see, this is getting an absolute incredible bark. We have that nice black color going on. I'm poking this fat, it's starting to render out really nice. You could tell it's starting to get nice and squishy. We're only at 195 degrees internal temperature in one of our smaller pieces. So that tells me that we still have a little bit of ways to go. So I'm gonna continue to check this about every 30 minutes or so until we hit that 200 or 205 degree mark. So I'll turn back on the camera when we're done and ready to take these off. A little over 4.5 hours, we reach our desired internal temperature. These are gonna need to rest a little while. So I'm gonna wrap them up in some aluminum foil and I'm gonna let them hang out on my counter. After wrapping it in the foil, I like to let it sit for about 30 minutes to 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half, or to when it's at about 140 degrees. The equation for me is really how perfect you want this to be compared to how long you want to wait. So let's go ahead and let's slice into this. I got the fat up still. Ooh, look at this piece that I cut off. Look at how wiggly that is. It just wants to break right apart, but it's still holding up on its own. These are the burnt ends. That's where all that seasoning is, or that fat is. So you know, I'm gonna have to go ahead and get one of these bites. Look at that. This is fatty. It's nice and rendered. Bacon. Let's go. Oh my gosh. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make some slices. Let's just go ahead, slice right into this. All right, one more. Look at that. That, I mean, practically touches. It's able to hold up on its own weight even when I jiggle it. Look at that. Wow. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna get a slice of this. Now, I know it looks like I put an extremely high amount of pepper on the pork belly before I smoked it. But me personally, when it comes to things that are really fatty, I don't think you could put too much pepper on unless you don't like spice. I like to put enough pepper on to where it's spicy. Now, depending on your flavor profile, you can put on more or less. I mean, look at that slice. Wow. You could eat this just like this. A lot of people like to cube this up, make it into burnt ends, put some sauce on it. This is more of a Texas style. Now, since this is a really short video, because there's not a lot of steps in the process to making this pork belly, I decided I'm gonna show you 2 different ways that you could eat this outside of just normally eating it. This is technically bacon, so what you could do is you could make a breakfast sandwich. I'm gonna show you guys how I like to make my bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit with this pork belly. All right, guys, so for my little biscuit here, we got the biscuit, I got the egg and the cheese. I didn't really film that because I don't really have time. I just took my pork belly, I pan-seared it a little bit, because I mean, it is bacon. Got some little cheese on there. So here we go. Here's what my sandwich looks like. It's dripping out that yolk. We're just gonna go ahead, jump in and get a bite. I wish you could taste. I don't even have words. This is insane. The cheese and the egg, that buttery biscuit, some nice black pepper, bacony pork belly smoked sandwich goodness. If you're wondering what cheese I used, it was mild cheddar. Use your favorite cheese. This sandwich is ridiculous. You have to make it for your friends, for your family. Now, I'm gonna move on to a completely other sandwich, because I said I was gonna give you 2. Next up, we're making a BLT. To start out our BLT, we need toast, and I'm using Texas toast. As you can see, it's nice and thick. Now, at my house, growing up as a child, I don't know how you made your BLTs. Mine always started out with mayonnaise on the bottom. So I'm gonna start out mine today. Spread a nice little layer of mayonnaise on the bottom. And I don't know if this is typical or not. My grandpa put mayonnaise on everything, like his brats, his burgers. So it's just kind of how I grew up. We go heavy on the mustard. Growing up as a kid, I absolutely loved mustard. I think for a BLT, it adds a lot of that tang in there because you have that fat flavor. You have some earthiness, freshness. You kind of need something like acidic to kind of cut through. Just gonna go ahead. And I want to make this even, so I'm gonna rip off a little bit of the ends, just so I can make this even, nice and pretty. All right, so I rip off that end. Now we're gonna build up that layer of bacon on there. We got some tomatoes. You gotta fold up your lettuce because you don't want it hanging over the sides, so that's weird. And then you got your BLT. Take a look at our BLT. We got thick cuts of this pork belly on here, smoked, delicious goodness. Let's go ahead and take a bite. All right, guys, cheers, let's go. That brought me back to my childhood for a second, but Mom, if you're watching this video, I make a better BLT than you did growing up. I'm sorry. This pork belly, you can do so many different things with it. You could make tacos with it. You could eat it just how it is. You could put it in a potato salad or not. Well, the way that we have cooked this pork belly today was absolutely phenomenal, but if you want a different way to cook this pork belly, you can watch my pork belly burnt ends video right here. Hope you guys have had a great day, night, whatever time it is when you found this video. As always, I'll see you guys in my next pork belly bacon sandwich fiesta.